Hi, Sandites. It is Spiritwear Friday as we pre-record this message for you guys today. So it's Friday. It's game day. I think we play Bartlesville at Bartlesville tonight. So go Sandites. I'm sitting in this space with Kristen Arnold, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services and HR. Ashley Canterbury, one of our counselors at Clyde Boyd Middle School. Kendra Roulette, counselor at Charles Page High School, of course, myself, and then JJ Smith, our principal at the Freshman Academy. In the room also are a couple of other counselors. They're in the background, but I did tell them if we trigger a comment or an idea that you might hear them, and they're really not ghost counselors, they're actually in the room. So today's, in light of Bullying Prevention Month for October, today's content is really about bullying and harassment and all the things that we hope we touch on that go around concerns about that. So hence, I think it was super appropriate to bring in our counseling staff plus site administrator that does deal with those issues. So we're just going to start out with a simple idea of defining bullying. What is bullying? It is defined by the law. And so districts are required to have policy around bullying and harassment, which we do. It's posted on our website. We'll give you information about that a little bit later. But just a definition, again, by law, but also just in context of what we see at school. What is bullying? And I know, Ashley, you had kind of expressed that when we were talking through this topic. So do you mind taking that one?
What we try to teach our kids is that there's a difference between bullying and students who are just being mean or unkind. And we explain that in that bullying is when someone is doing something to make you feel like they are more powerful than you or they are greater than you, you are less than them in a repetitive manner. It doesn't just happen one time, which we would say, well, that's not nice. It's very mean of them to say that, but it's not really bullying. But if it's happening repetitively and they're continuously making you feel like they're more powerful or better, and that's where we would call it bullying.
Fantastic. Ashley, I love that you're here because now you're at Clyde Boyd, but you spent some years at Angus Valley Elementary in the same capacity as a counselor. And so, and Kendra, I think both of you kind of maybe could address the difference maybe between elementary and secondary. And when you have kids come to your offices and want to talk about students who can be mean to each other. By the way, adults can be mean to each other too. So we have to try to train them up, right? And make sure that we're doing the right by them to make sure they understand that. But is there a difference between elementary and secondary?
There's a huge difference even when we were having our group discussion. I think Ashley said it very well. It is very much like elementary kids, a lot of times they have no filter and they're going to just say, oh, I don't like your shoes. Okay. Or those shoes look cheap. Did you get them at wherever? And that's just a mean comment. It is. It's mean. It's not nice. And we're going to sit down. And I know that the elementary counselors are great about this. You guys sit down and talk with them.
Role play. How do you think that comment made someone else feel? How would you feel if someone said that about your new jacket that you got that you love because they don't like the team that you chose to wear? You know, we do a lot of talking through things and trying to get them to understand another person's perspective.
Right. So and I think when you get to high school, you don't run into that, I don't like your shoes, and kids saying that's bullying as much as we see more of that repetitive, trying to have that place of power over somebody. But we still have kids that'll come in and go, oh my gosh, this person just said this to me, and this mean thing, and it was bullying. And it's like, okay, but have they ever done this before? Have they ever, no, we're normally best friends. Okay, then let's take the bullying word out. They were being mean to you today. Let's talk through it. And then if it continues, then come see me. Then we're going to have this discussion and we're going to go on to the next steps. But it's in high school, secondary, you also see a lot of it on devices. That's the devices, the social media. That's the huge difference because really elementary kids, even if they do have phones, and we know some of them do, because they walk home, they have whatever, they have a device, but they're really not as active on social media and their friends are not always as active. So you don't run into them as that being a part of it. It's middle school and high school where you see the social media bullying happening a lot more.
Right. So the poster, everything you needed to know, you learned in kindergarten. Remember that? I did a whole graduation speech on that a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's good.
But there's an element of truth. We hit academics really hard. There is no doubt. But what I do love about public schools, and I know it's not just happening in Sand Springs, but our ability to really have those conversations with students about kindness and empathy and respect for each other, which is why we do the character traits of the month. So I love that you're hitting that. And I think that's a part of kind of that preemptive, let's try to prevent it before we have problems.
And at the elementary level, that's a huge part of our job as elementary counselors is to do, we call it tier 1, which means we're doing lessons with every student in our school. And we're trying to teach them things like kindness and even self-advocacy. You know, if someone says something like that to you about your shoes, what can you say back to help them understand what their comment made you feel? And we have them practice making those I statements. And that's a big part of elementary counseling.
You all were talking when we were discussing this before about you had said 2 sides to every story.
And I said, nope, there's 3. Because there's usually the one person's side, the other person's side, and then kind of that middle ground that really represents the whole story. And that is a big thing that we deal with a lot at the secondary is the kid's going to come in and they're going to tell us everything that's happened. And then we have to investigate it. And that's where Mr. Smith and Mr. Ray come in and we go and they say, oh, this is happening. And we get all the notes and we figure out everything that's going on. And then we're going to go investigate it and we're going to see, and we're going to talk to the other student. And amazingly enough, we're going to get a whole different side. And so we have to then kind of figure out, okay, who's really pushing this agenda, who's doing what, and we've got to figure out how to deal with it at that point.
It's hard to decipher those pieces too. We're going to get to investigation, I promise.
Okay, but wait, I always have to be that devil's advocate and throw this other thing in. Yeah. So let's say that I have a second grader and having been a principal in elementary and another kid says to my second grader, out on the playground, they're playing a game, but then one gets mad at the other. You know what that's like when you have siblings at home and then they're playing peacefully and all of a sudden you're like, oh, where are we at? But if one child says to another, I'm going to kill you. I'm so mad, I'm going to kill you. So, and you know, they're playing this game. It happens it happens a couple times. And then your child comes home and says, you know, Ashley told me she's going to kill me on the playground. And I just want to say, like, how that's handled at elementary or secondary are really 2 different things because, yes, that child should go report to the teacher. So a counselor or a teacher outside can have that conversation about, hey, let's think about what we're saying and what words we're using. But, you know, when you talk about media, you've got TV and all kinds of things. And if you're an elementary student, you really probably at that point don't understand what you're saying. It looks a little bit different when you get to secondary, and it's a lot more of a serious accusation. But I know those kind of things come up, and I would get calls from parents about bullying for, you know, things like that are said, but it's really more of a conversation that needs to happen about let's think about what we're saying and how would that make you feel. So you guys said that, but it's a harsher statement.
So I think that lends itself to, I want parents to understand and hear us say, we are promoting safety at school. 100%. So I don't want anyone to go away from this conversation thinking anything different. Our goal is to make sure kids are safe. Yes. And we don't want anyone to feel like anyone else has power over them. So that is absolutely.
Well, if you hear that, you go report. Absolutely. Like if your child comes home and says somebody said something awful mean, you let us know because we can't fix what we don't know.
JJ, you mentioned something about that comfort level with kids. Absolutely. Do you remember that comment?
Absolutely. I think it's important for parents and students to understand that one thing that we want is for our kids, our students to feel comfortable coming in and talking to us. Because if we can get them to come in and talk to us, we get more of the story. We get more information. And then we also get other people that we can talk to by listening to them and they give us the people that were involved. And so that's a little better. We have other ways for them to report as well.
Right.
But it's a little better for us when they come in and actually talk to us so that we can get more of the information.
One of the things we work on really hard is developing trust relationships with families and students. And so that's a goal. And I feel like it doesn't always happen. We don't live in utopia. But I think there's a lot of students that really do trust the adults that are in the schools and will come and talk to us. And I can see my counselors at the rest of us at Charles Page High School, they're nodding, which is true. But let's talk about the dynamics of how to report. We do have Stop It, and that's an app that you can report anonymously.
Absolutely.
But I also want Ms. Arnold, if you don't mind talking about just a smidgen policy, we do have a policy, but
Right.
the form and those, why would I want to fill out a form? Where is it at? Those kinds of things.
Well, just a little bit about, like you said earlier, all districts have a policy, and it is the state law that we have a policy on bullying, and that can be found on samdites.org. And there's also going to be a link that we're going to share out so you can read through that. And there's a form that you fill out for bullying, and parents can either go find that form and fill that out, and then, they'll more than likely the administrator is going to call, ask for some additional information from you to gain that. It's important that that is done early, because kids forget even faster than adults about what had happened. So you might, list 5 kids that were there, but you didn't get the form turned in. And, 3 weeks later, especially if it's a little one, they're like, I don't know what I ate for breakfast this morning. So, but there's a form. You can ask an administrator for the form. You can ask a counselor for that form, and we'll be happy to supply that. If you look through the form, you'll see that there's an area for parents to fill out, or a student, and then there's also an area of what administration has done. So that's been around for in fact, we just redid.
Maybe
I did it
years. It's been around a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but the forms were redone like 4 or 5 years ago, because I just redid them. Maybe it was like 3 years, but still they've always been there. And we encourage parents to call administration first, though, to have that conversation, because perception is real, but a lot of times students will come home and they remember how they felt, and they're sharing how they felt, and maybe all the details weren't shared. And that's our job to find out really what happened.
You can also access those forms by talking to your building principal or counselors. They're going to know all of the ins and outs of how to get to that. And then the other part, you talked a little bit about investigation. I would say, before we get there, we do train all of our employees. And so in light of knowing that we have to have a policy, part of what we do as a district that is required is we're training all of our people. So they're trained to know what to look for, or questions to ask to find out, kind of investigating what really happened.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say on the report, sometimes a form seems overwhelming, and an email to us is that gets it started as well. Like a lot of, and that's that Sand Springs, we're relationship driven. I mean, we build relationships with our students, our parents, we do all that. So we want them to feel comfortable coming to us, kind of like Mr. Smith said, like coming to us in person. The form is, and we'll get the form and get it going if, once we receive those emails. But an email, if you're feeling overwhelmed by, I don't know what all to do, email us. Don't let that discourage you from letting us know what's happening. That's our job. We'll help you with that.
And I think we need to understand too that our kids are comfortable with using email and those things. And so that may be something that they're more comfortable with, and we appreciate those emails coming as well.
Some of our elementaries students are pretty astute with the email.
Mm-hmm. But I'm going to be honest too, sometimes maybe a form is not necessary, or the student will say, I really don't want to, I just want them to stop. Can we just have a conversation? Right. Or, the parent is like, well, I just want it to stop. I don't want to fill out the form. I don't want to go through all that. So it's not like every time an incident happens that, you could just say, I just want you to have a conversation. Let's start there and let's see what happens.
We do that a lot, the three of us. And I can think of about 2 or 3 instances even this week where we sat down kids and we're like, okay, this is happening. I need this to stop. This is happening. I need this to stop. And they do. They're really very good about listening to us. Responsive. And a lot of times that's all that's needed is, and sometimes, I even had one earlier this week, and we followed through with it. And the student, in being that they were saying was bullying, was like, I wasn't aware that's how it came off. Right. Making them aware, that's how that's coming off, and they stop. And as much as we like to assume all students know immediately what they're doing, they don't. They're kids. We've got to teach them. We've got to help them learn. You can't say things like that without it, being that's how that person's feeling it, and it's not okay.
Well, I think we also need to make sure that the students that they're saying this to, let them know how it makes them feel. Let them know that, look, I wish you would stop that. This is uncalled for, so that they know that what they're doing is wrong. Because a lot of times they're just playing around.
Yes.
And they don't get it. And so if the person that that is being called the names or being told things that they don't like, if they say, look, this makes me uncomfortable, or I don't want you saying that, it helps the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to make a very solid statement about when we have an email or a report or any way, however that's conveyed, an investigation will always happen.
Absolutely.
So I just think that's such a strong statement to make, and we're going to make sure that we're doing those things because it's the right thing to do. When an investigation ensues, JJ, sometimes it takes you
It takes a while. It does take a while. And it's one of those things where, like we mentioned earlier, you want to get both sides and you want to talk to all the people, as many of the people that you know that was involved in it. You want to talk to them. And that could be a full day, maybe two, before we get all of the information that we need. But it's part of it. You know, you've got to make sure that you're looking into it, that we take these things seriously, that students aren't being ignored. Parents, when they call, we want them to know that they're not going to be ignored. We're going to take it serious and we're going to investigate.
A lot of people will call, if there's ever a time it gets to Mrs. Arnold or myself, a lot of people will call and want to know what happened. What was the conclusion? What did you do? And that's a huge piece of, again, part of the law about confidentiality. So do you mind talking about that? Just a minute?
Absolutely. And I understand why they would want to know that, because in their mind, they're, you know, and rightfully so, they feel like their child has been picked on and they want to know what the school's doing about it. And legally, we can't tell you what we did to another student. I mean, we can tell you that it's been handled and we are still continuing to look into it, that type of thing, but we can't tell you the quote consequences that another student received. And so that's just law. But like we mentioned the form before, the form, when it gets to that point, we're going to document what we did. Now, we're not going to tell you it's not going to have discipline consequences on it, but it'll talk about the steps that we went through.
Right. And because of student protection laws about confidentiality.
I think that's the hardest part for parents is, and it is, because when they're little and they fight on your street or whatever, you see the consequences. That kid gets grounded and goes home, that kid. But when they're older, we can't tell you, like we legally cannot tell you what the consequences were, because we have to protect our students' privacy, and you would want us to protect your students' privacy. And it's just hard because you're hurt and your child's hurt and you want to know what's going to happen. And it's hard to not know the exact thing that happened.
I think at least we're sitting here and we've all been parents. And so we empathize. There's no doubt we empathize. No one loves to have their child hurt because mom or dad, it hurts your heart too. And that's the truth. And so we just need to be respectful of all of our students involved.
Well, and I think it's really difficult for parents too when things happen on social media and they don't really know where to go. Because, and my child, you know, personally had that situation with some girls that were saying mean things. And I mean, she's older now, but bar none, I just say, don't reply. Don't reply. No reply.
So that is our schemata. We try hard as a district even to work on our social media words, to put it lightly. But social media is a huge thing, and it's here to stay. And I don't know how else to say that. Yeah. I will say, from my daughter graduated in 12 and my son graduated in 19, and in that 6-year span of time, social media has been on steroids. It just blew up. And so what my 22-year-old has had to deal with versus what my 29-year-old had to deal with are two different things. And what's tricky about social media in terms of investigation is you can't always know. If you are not familiar with some of the apps that your child is using, you need to be. If you're allowing your children to have access to Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok is a big one. Of course, Facebook is, I think, for older people. I don't know.
I love it. And Be Real is a new one.
Okay,
Be Real.
So we're in process of looking for some information that we can start shipping out to parents every day to educate you. But as we were having a small group conversation about social media, and sometimes we can't investigate or do anything about it if it happens off campus. Where we can is if the behavior bleeds on to campus and it starts disturbing the school day. How often does that happen, Mr.
And that happens a lot. And what we tell them is if it's a situation, because even the students are aware that, hey, I did this outside of school. Well, the thing that you need to understand is doing it outside of school and then it gets to the school and it causes a disruption of the school day. Now we're addressing that thing, and it could be a long process as well. And once you start causing a disruption in the school day, then we can take it from there. And that there could be consequences for disrupting the school day.
There's actually case law
Absolutely
out there that
Absolutely.
would allow that to happen. And again, if we can't complete our mission of educating our students, then that's a disruption.
Well, and that's why at the middle school, that's the biggest reason that we don't allow our students to carry their phones with them during the day.
Right.
And, you know, we have parents that they don't like that rule. They want their child to have their phone on them during the day. They want to be able to contact their child. And it's not an effort by the school to keep them out of contact with their child. That's not the goal. The problem with phones is the social media during the day, and the kids that would use social media while they're in school, you know, to whether it's taking pictures of friends or teachers and posting them to social media during the school day. Those are the reasons that middle school students are asked to leave their phone in their locker. It's not because we don't want their parents to be able to reach them.
It's such a distraction too.
Right.
As a leadership team, we've been trying really hard to have a device-free meeting. And it's tough on adults too. We are struggling with that a little bit. And so the whole context of having your phone just available all the time is really powerful and psychological, and it's even physiological as well. And so it's a true thing. And I think with kids who are in those developmental stages that aren't quite to the maturity level that we would like to see them at 25, hopefully.
Yes.
Can I just circle back to the apps? And, you know, I'm old school now. I'll admit it. But with that said, there are apps that a child could put on a phone that actually hide conversations. And so conversations can be said between two apps. And so you're not just looking at text messaging, or you're not just looking at just Snapchat, because we all know that Snapchat, the conversation goes away. After you type it in, it goes away. And then parents, you know, get upset with us, but they don't even understand Snapchat sometimes that goes away. Or
However,
if a kid takes
they
a
can
picture of
screenshot
it, right? But then that person, if you screenshot Snapchat, it notifies the person.
But some of them use other phones. Like they get around a lot.
So to get control of this conversation, you understand how it's out of control. And so as we start talking about those little nuances, we probably have y'all all confused, maybe. But it's a true thing. So the question we posed in our group before we came on camera was, at what age should a child have access to social media? And one of them, there were sitting, the ghost counselors that are actually in the room and not ghosty at all. One of them said something. Y'all remember what you said? When should you give a kid access to apps with social media? I think one of you said never, kind of jokingly.
I think it was me.
I think it was you. Oh, you said never. And then Megan is in the background, but she was super strongly opinion. I think about this. We're talking about passwords. And what did you say?
You need to know everybody's password. Like you should know your
passwords
passwords for everything.
If you're
right.
And that's what I would like to say. Parents should not ever hesitate on checking their kids' social media platforms and their phones. I mean, don't hesitate there. Maybe my kids were raised a little differently, but I told them, you don't have privacy if I'm paying for that phone. That's just me.
And kids, I have watched a child send a text message to a number that wasn't a contact in their phone. It was just a number. And as soon as they sent the message, they swiped it and deleted it because they did not want a trace of that conversation or even that person in their phone. And I've watched it with my own eyes, and that's scary. Like it's scary as a parent.
You guys, Megan's got her hand up, and I want to.
Well, I was just going to say, there are apps also that parents can install on their phones that monitor their children's phones.
Yeah.
And at any time, they can lock them down during the day. They can put time restraints on them. They can put app restraints on them. They can put all kinds of it's just like on the television with cable. You can lock it if you don't want your child to have access to Netflix or HBO, you can do that. And which takes away the distraction sometimes of the classroom by a parent going, why are you on the phone during third hour? I'm going to lock it down. And I have a lot of parents that do that.
And they can ask those questions to you guys if you need help with that.
Yes.
Well, I think I opened up Pandora's box.
Well,
so
but let me say this one thing.
I think that's where it goes to partnership. That's
prevention as well.
Agree. So here's the thing, though. The privacy thing is a huge concept, you guys. I can remember my oldest son, I hate to admit this, but I'm going to say it because it's pertinent. It was 31. And a parent of a kiddo, when they were in high school, so we're talking 10 years ago even, said, but I don't want to infringe on the privacy of my child. And what did you just say, Jay? This is so powerful.
Well, I've told my children, look, you don't have privacy if I'm paying for the phone.
There you go.
And that's got to be, I think that's a way a parent need to handle the social. It changes so much, and there's so many things that they can do that you need to be aware of those changes. And the only way you're going to be aware is to go on and check those phones and make sure you know what their social media
and not
stuff
only
is.
to monitor what your child is doing and saying,
right,
but also to monitor what's being sent to your child
right,
and what your child is receiving and reading.
Right.
My oldest is in 6th grade, and I recently found a conversation on her phone that just had some words that I didn't know what they meant. So I asked her, what do these mean? She wasn't really sure either. So we got together and we started looking them up online, and we were both immediately very surprised at what these words were.
Right.
And we had to sit down and have that conversation. I don't think her friends really even knew what they were.
I think it's the cool thing.
But
some of the kids they want the boundaries.
Yes.
They do. They don't know how to ask for them because they want to be high school kids. They want to be older. They need us to step in and go, no, you can't do that.
Right.
I'm gonna limit you on that. And they may push you on it because they're kids and this is what they do. But some of them are begging for those boundaries so that they don't have to tell their friends no.
Megan.
I was just going to say it's a level of protection.
Yes.
Right.
As a parent, our responsibility is to protect our
Yes.
children.
Mm-hmm.
And some children need a little more protection than others. And that's, whether it's their phone or maybe someone's not ready to drive a car yet,
Right.
or stay at home alone. All levels of protection, but with that
And
phone,
it's individual for each child.
Absolutely.
Every single child is different. And that's one of the things we talked about that we didn't talk about. Every single situation is different.
Yes.
Every time a child or a student comes in our office and tells us a story, it's going to be a little bit different. And I think that's another thing that some parents struggle understanding. Well, I heard that little Johnny threw a rock and hit a kid in the head and he just got this consequence. So why is my kid getting this consequence?
Yes.
Every situation is different. And that's one of those balancing acts that we as school leaders have to really be careful with too.
And again, just because you heard those were the consequences doesn't mean
Right.
those were the consequences
Right.
because
Right.
we can't
Right.
tell you.
I hope that this gets a lot of attention in terms of views on our channel. I hope that folks are seeing a group of people that are very passionate about student safety, very passionate about just loving kids and making sure they have the feedback and the guidance they need to navigate what is going on in today's world that is probably here to stay. And so I hope that's the message that we send, because we do care about our students and we do care about their safety, and we don't want anyone to feel like they're harassed or bullied. And there's resources that we can provide and we can be for students and parents. One last note, Kristen alluded to it just a bit. We need partnership with the guardians and parents and guardians. We need your partnership. We need your eyes, your ears, your communication, so that together we build a safer place at Sand Springs Public Schools. That's how it happens. I think any piece of a child's life, any significant adult in a child's life that tries to do that alone, it's almost impossible. So allow us to be a partner with you to make sure that your student is getting what they need at school, academically, emotionally, but also with this specific topic. So I think we're done, but I certainly want anyone that has a comment to finish?
No, our
finish
main
strong.
goal is for every child to learn.
Yes.
We want every child to learn,
Right.
and they can't learn if they don't feel safe.
Absolutely.
So that's why we do our job.
Absolutely.
Well, and I just want to say that I say this all the time, perception is real. So a lot of parents call me. So that perception to that child is real, but there might be other influencing factors. And so that goes back to that partnership to let us help you. And so instead of just, immediately wanting that discipline or whatever to happen, give us the opportunity to work with you to find out what's going on. And then especially with our counselors that do such a fabulous job in our district to help work through those concerns with you and with your students.
So I think we'll conclude with those comments. Again, share away, please. Let people know that this is out there, that there are resources in the district. With our post, we definitely will put a link to the form that we're talking about, just so that you're aware. And then the policy can be found on our website under, I think, administration, drop down. There's one that says policy, district policy. It's pretty easy to find. So thank you for allowing us to visit you via social media. And go Sandites tonight. Beat
Yes,
Bartlesville.
go Sandbags.